this time there is not much for the real estate industry. It is only extension of 1 year for ATIB, that affordable housing, and 1 year 1.5 lakh additional exemption for affordable housing. But in long term, if you see that overall budget is good for country, I would say. Most important thing is that 35,000 crore provision for COVID vaccine is a very good thing. This will boost the sentiment of the country. This will give lot of confidence to common people, because government is making this provision. That means the vaccine will be available for common people. Most likely, for most of the people, it will be free. So people will be bringing back economy on track very fast. It's already, we are seeing this economy coming back on track. So with this, and we have our own vaccine supply, we have our own manufacturing, we are exporting to the world over, we are sending across the globe. So this is going to be a very big push to economy, considering the world scenario. Moreover, seeing this, investment in infrastructure, healthcare, and urban transport is also a very welcome move. In context of West Bengal, there is a commitment of 25,000 crore for this highways, national highway, etc. That's a very good move. And then TDS, removal of TDS from dividend will attract FDI. See, there are a lot of countries where tax rate is less, so if the TDS is not deducted for them, it's a good for them. So you see, the cash flow is better, and they maybe that is low, so it makes it a case for them. Then is this capitalization for bank 20,000 crore, and by making it asset reconstruction company, so the company will 20,000 crore, now they can raise more fund. So this will also help in banking sector.
Right.
So I would say that this is not a budget for only real estate. It's a country's budget. So we have to understand that. Then there is a lot of ease of doing business, like faceless in appellate tribunal, relief to NRIs for bringing their income back here, giving them the relief from double taxation, etc. These are some very good factor, I would say, in terms of ease of doing business also. We were expecting some slopes, like any industry would expect that the real estate having 8% contribution to GDP. So we were expecting that there should be some relief to our home buyers, and then removal of Section 40C, CA, and 56 to 10, which creates problem with the mismatch of IGR value, and deemed rental income on unsold inventory. These were few points which were very reasonable points raised by CREDAI, but the government has perhaps had different priorities, so they have not looked into it.
It can still be addressed.
It was only ease of doing business, but the government has not looked into it.
Right. But I think these are issues that can still be addressed. The government doesn't seem to be waiting for budget 2022 to address issues that are irritants. They have been listening to you, right? So these are probably...
There 2-3 times there were some measures taken by government. Hopefully that same spirit should continue, that it is just not the budget when they will look into things, but they should also look into ease of doing business as a continuous exercise.
Right. Please. Absolutely. Before we go on to Raj, I want to just read out 2-3 comments that have come. There's Devesh Agnihotri, who says the housing sector is facing problems like unsold inventory of residential units and incomplete projects, due to which many home buyers are still waiting to get possession of property. Will budget 2021 resolve? I don't think a budget can resolve this, but there does need to be intervention. I'd like your views on those. Real estate sector has been hit by the pandemic. Homes haven't been delivered. While the pandemic impact will fade, what can the budget do to fix the regulatory mess in the sector? This is something that you may want to address. And Kunal Kumar asks, the government promised 11 crore houses by 2022, 100 smart city projects and housing for all by 2022. Is budget 2021 a step closer to that goal? So with these questions in the background, and also Kuldip Chawlla, this is a budget that was not for 2021. It was a budget for the next 3 to 4 years. It's like a directional budget. It has talked about how to fix finances, big ticket issues, how to disinvest the assets that are already created, like highways like ports, airports, and things like that, and how to actually create a mechanism where finance that's coming in can actually be structured, monitored. They talked about artificial intelligence. They talked about machine learning. A lot of modernization on the cards, if I may say so. Kuldip Chawlla, over to you. You're on mute.
All right. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, firstly, you'll have to forgive me. I have a slight cold, but no COVID. And certainly I can't transmit it from here. The second thing I'd just like, by way of a disclaimer, is that, all the views that I expressed here are personal and, are not those of the company that I hold the designation for. Actually, I think that, whilst the budget could always have done more on the direct side, I think it is the indirect aspects of the budget that I actually compliment the finance minister and the government for. Because, I think the multiplier effect and the enduring significant impact of many of the measures, are actually indeed significant. Let me even state this, that even if you, and let me put this in context, a benign and low rate of interest for home buyers is a far greater enduring benefit than any tax or fiscal incentive. And in the same way, addressing supply side bottlenecks, addressing and bringing to the fore land that is locked up, addressing the financing and the balance sheets of the banks, addressing infrastructure, doing the ARC and the AMC, encouraging foreign capital, of which we have a significant dearth in this country, are all smart 2, 3, 4, 5-year kind of measures that I compliment the government for. The growth impact, the employment impact, the GDP impact, the sentiment improvement are all significant positives for almost every segment of the real estate sector, whether it is housing, whether it is income producing assets, or indeed, two segments which have been hit very hard in the pandemic, which is retail and hospitality. So, I think that for example, addressing people's health improves productivity. Those gains are huge and humongous. There is, of course, the benefit of GDP growth, so on and so forth, right? The second impact, for example, is the big push on infrastructure. Whilst a sector that contributes 8% of GDP, will benefit significantly from the jobs that will get created, both with the health infrastructure, which I call the soft or social infrastructure, indeed, along with what is being done or planned on education, as well as the hard infrastructure, whether that is to do with the highways, the metro in those 4 cities, 90,000 crores, big expansion. I think affordable housing and, access will have direct benefits from that, or whether it is the plethora of other infrastructure benefits. A third leg is what has been done for the InvITs and the REITs, whether it is enabling more funds to come in, which I think will free up the balance sheets of some or many developers and provide growth capital, or whether it is the compliance, and indeed there is something small in it with regard to the dividend on treaty rates. Again, one needs to look into some of the fine print, but I think those are some of the direct benefits. The last but not the least indirect benefit is related to the cleaning up of the banks, both with regard to giving them more capital through the stressed assets and the DFI. And I heard the finance minister say that they were not only thinking of doing this with public money, which is the government seeding it, but that they would have a similar framework for the private sector to do it. And indeed, I am hoping that although it is taken time, the Swami Fund, which the government initiated, I'm very hopeful that you will see other similar private initiatives, which will get kicked off. The last bit with regard to the stressed and assets is twofold. Number one, that I think public sector undertakings, the land that will get freed up, could be in fairly good locations to enable both affordable housing as well as affordable rental housing. And the last bit is to do with the compliance and the ease of doing business with regard to the processes and procedures, whether they are with regard to the NCLT or the stressed assets pieces, the whole, and that is where I'm hopeful that whilst nothing concrete was announced, that the implementation, should be speedy. Right. That's where I think, at least I would be watching very closely on what the government does.
Okay. Mr. Suresh, pick up from where Raj Chawla left off. Clearly, good measures, mobilizing public sector money, private sector money, FDI. What about the consumer's money? REITs is one way of doing it, but it's the consumer today, there's a lot of money that needs to be invested. And are we going to have bonds markets, which are consumer focused as well? Because I have a very large volume of consumers here. Do you expect that this kind of thing will happen?
First of all, let me compliment Kuldip ji for the way in which he articulated. I was very impressed by the way he said it. And I think that's a real situation. That's a real meaning of the budget. This budget may not be directly told, but then there are so many things that you do over there, all will lead to finally to good built environment, good housing, good real estate. All of them will automatically start coming. If those things are already set in place, that's exactly the whole idea. And the long-term effect and not a short-term of something immediately made available. Yes, the answer is it is possible, definitely possible. The implementation and the institutional mechanism to deal with that is an important component to make each of the thing work in a large way. For example, accessing funds is a very important. Both he talked of not only REIT, but he also talked in terms of the infrastructure re-invite. Also, he talked about that also. And both of them are very much necessary for bringing investors' funds into a large way. That's where individual money will come. And you're also going away for investors to come, not only of institutional investors, but also individual investors to come into the particular one. That is where the bond market, Madam, the Finance Minister did talk of that particular one. Access to the long-term money is also an important component that was mentioned in this context there. There will the individuals' funding will come in a large way into large number of these projects, provided they are well structured and you're also a good delivery and you're also able to ensure timely delivery of this particular one. It's important to do that. There is need for housing is absolutely clearly there. There is no two doubts about that. Somebody made a mention about the 1.11 million or 1.1 crore houses in the urban area. But was good news is that out of that 1.1 crore, roughly of the order of around 98 lakhs or something is already sanctioned and funds are already released. So 1.1 crore, the remaining are already started off. So that shows that the delivery is happening. It's a matter of time. 2022 requires another 2 more years to complete the whole of 2021 and 2022. I'm sure once the demand is already assessed, and that is where for the original 20 million house or 2 crores house, they brought it down to 1.1, primarily because that is where the real need and the demand got established, not a perceptional housing shortage, but the real demand-based particular housing was done on that. So it will definitely happen. And I think what is required is to find out how best to channelize the investment funds available with the people, and especially financial institution, even DFIs, when they come over there, substantial funds, they also have to generate funds from the various other markets, including the investments of people. You look at the way in which today the stock market has gone phenomenally. Whose money is that? They're all funds which are coming for a large number of investors, which come institutional as well as retail coming. So also will come in the real estate sector. And real estate sector is not housing alone. It will come to all other sectors of development, office complex or retail or hospitality or various other things, healthcare, etc., etc. It will positively come, and I'm very confident that it will come on that. It sets the right direction, and as you said, this is a direct. I like the word. I think you used the word directly. It's a directional budget, and it's a long-term one. It's not a 2021 activity. Most of the things that we told in terms of money are for the next 3 years, 4 years. I told about the mission, water mission. That's a fund for the next 3-4 years time period. It's all implementation 2021, 22, 23, 24, around that. 2 to 3 years time period is the implementation time for each one of those things on the rail sector, highway sector. It's not that you will be spending 1.2 lakhs in one calendar year. No way. That's not the type of meaning.
Okay, Mr. Suresh, I'm going to go to Sushil Mohta. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has allocated a budget of 25,000 crore for roads in West Bengal and for upgrading of existing Kolkata Siliguri road. While these clearly are election benefits, but how will this impact the real estate in your region?
Well, I think, you see, if it is implemented, it will bring an overall development, because in road infrastructure badly needs investment in West Bengal. But, you know, there has to be a collaboration between the state government and the central government, because the central government may release the fund, but if the state government has to make the land available for widening the road or making the road, etc. So it will collaborative as far as the road infrastructure is concerned. And with regard to your metro railway and all, because these are in final leg of completion, so there should not be much of the problem. So what the investment is required, the government has to put in, and you know, most of the metro railway projects in Kolkata are more than 60%, 70%, or some of them are 80% complete. So those are more or less in track.
Yeah. Okay.
But road infrastructure, I'm quite hopeful. State government also come forward with the collaborative and spirit, and with the election around the corner, you know, any government comes for them, they may take some hard decisions, be it the current regime or the new regime, whoever comes, they will have an opportunity to come with some hard decisions and do something for public infrastructure, moving away from populist sentiments.
Thank you, Sushil. Kuldip, coming to you, you know, you spoke about very eloquently about you know, few of the aspects on the budget side of it. I think we just wanted to touch upon the Atmanirbhar theme as well, you know, which the government's been promoting very strongly, and we did discuss about 13 sectors, you know, where the impacts kind of coming in, with 1,97,000 crores getting allocated around it, and different ministries looking at the implementation rules and policy around it. You know, when you put this in the context of, one is the overall, you know, what is there any specific view that you would like to highlight? And secondly, when you relate to real estate sector also today, there are several components which are, especially on the luxury flats and the, you know, ultra luxury flats, with a lot of import component which is there, you know, as part of the you know, construction, and especially on the finishing aspect of it there. Is there any aspects that we should relate to? Is there a way that industry should really go forward and look at that, you know, there could be a certain amount of allocation which happens subsequently from a real estate perspective as well?
So two things, you know. Number one, I think the overall Atmanirbhar theme is actually an excellent one in concept, but we need to look at this from 2 points of view. As a general concept, and I think the same principle applies to any sector, including but not limited to the real estate sector. The Atmanirbhar is not a replacement theory aspect. We can, and I think that's the intent as well, and it's obviously refined over time, is to make India globally competitive. You know, and I go back to something which I heard Rahul Bajaj's son talk about, Rajiv Bajaj or somebody talked about it, and he said we are globally competitive. So I think that is what we need. It is not about X sector, Y sector, X region, Y region. So that is the first part. I think it's a great initiative to enable India to become self-reliant on a globally competitive basis, across products. The other angle of this is to diversify the employment mix and the exports mix, because we are globally integrated. You don't want too much of a reliance on services in general or tech, IT, software in particular. Not to say that, the Atmanirbhar principle cannot apply to services. Of course it can. You've seen SaaS, for example, come out of India, software as a service. You've seen product companies come out of India. You've seen unicorns come out of India at a much faster rate, right? So that's the first part. The second part, and the reason I highlight these things on the Atmanirbhar piece is because I think the employment generation prospect, is significantly enhanced, when you are self-reliant on a competitive basis for the domestic market, and you are globally competitive to be able to export to the market outside of India. The sustainability of income and employment growth is real and enduring. Insofar as the real estate sector is concerned, I think there are two parts to this. One is what you might call in terms of, goods and services that are used, right? But I think the overall theme of Atmanirbhar, and I'd like to touch upon this because over the course of the last year or two that, year or so that we've had this theme there, I've had the privilege of interacting with entrepreneurs, both within the real estate sector, but indeed other sectors across industries. And they were driven by the Bharat and pride factor to say, why can't we do it for our country? And I think the point I'm trying to drive at is that one is you are doing import substitution of goods that are being imported, right? And we import everything from basic stuff like tiles and taps, to luxury goods, right? Including by our own domestic companies who have manufacturing outside the country. The limited point is that insofar as real estate is concerned, why can't we do a two-step process? One is an import substitution, but the second, in keeping with the theme that I outlined for everything else earlier, export competitive production in India. Why can't we do that? Because I think the benefit of this is humongous. Home building, what prevents us from being the biggest home builder, once we've satisfied domestic demand or gotten to a level of doing the same thing, for example, with affordable housing in Africa, or indeed other highly populated countries around the world, particularly in the East. Back to you, Neeraj.
I just love that perspective. Get your house in order, build for the country, and then go out and
Good. Very good.
Very
go and conquer the world.
Go conquer the world. I think this budget is all about go conquer the world, and to do that we have to set our house in order. And I think I liked the message, and I liked your interpretation of the message. I really have to say that this budget has been more about infrastructure, more about getting the right things in order, finance wherever it is required, how to make it, create new assets, monetize existing assets. But more than anything, I think it was not a real estate focused budget, but it was real estate is a collateral benefit of everything else that is defined in the budget. And to that extent, I think it's a very, very positive. It's one of the most positive budgets I would have commented on. Neeraj, closing comments from you. Let's get closing comments from all our panelists.
Thanks, Jayashree, for that, and thank you very much for everyone to join us through these sessions, and Kuldip and Sushil, specifically to you, Suresh, for really giving us insights in every session in more detailed manner as well. And as kind of Jayashree said, truly, in terms of the kind of response that you got for this budget, even from the markets as well, is phenomenal over there, and which kind of reflects the the mood and the theme that's been kind of running as well, through the entire the budgeting process, and then today's execution, what the finance minister has done, and then clearly the way it has kind of prioritized some of these sectors, whether it's healthcare sector, whether it's the infra in terms of the railway, the roads, the port aspect of it. It has kind of prioritized that we have to generate funds as well, so those are getting created through the disbursement route, as well as invitation and investment through the foreign players as well, through different mechanisms around it. And I think I particularly like the theme to have structural changes being done, to see that there is a lesser of compliance burden, more of ease of doing business also coming in, from a go forward perspective. And that's also running through different stakeholders. So it's not being concentrated, on a particular set of stakeholders only around it. And I think the other perspective has been that, which is also a positive, side, that we are not, this budget has not been, focused on, a people pleasing mode as well there, which has been sometimes a challenge, for our budget makers around it. And, we do end up, then with, spreading the money so thin that the impacts of this would not be visible, so I think government does have time as well. So the next 3 years, to kind of as a runway to kind of go forward. So which is where I think it sets a very nice and strong foundation to build on. And all of us acknowledge this is a very difficult time period as well. So throughout last 9 or 10 months that all of us have been, and the expectations with the economic indicators turning positive, with all of the push that is happening. So look forward to a positively a better and a more fruitful, and certainly, as we're calling it, a V shape, shaped by V as a nomenclature there in that. So look forward to that.
Right. Sushil Mohta?
Yeah, you see, I would say that union budget has very little to contribute to real estate. It is the state governments which can play a major role. You just see the case of Maharashtra in last 3 months with the reduction of stamp duty, with reduction of certain other fees and approval fees and charges and some other soaps. They have turned around the real estate industry, which was absolutely in very, very crying conditions. And in 3 months' time, it's doing good. The government revenue has increased with the reduced stamp duty. The sales are happening, and real estate sector is looking up. So I think the state governments also have to come forward and see that how they can play a collaborative. They can come with a collaborative approach, not only for real estate but also for growth of infrastructure. The government is laying the path. The state governments have to come forward, do the partnership, and reap the benefit.
Kuldip?
4 or 5 comments. The IMF last week actually gave a signal that, an expansionary fiscal deficit need not be a bad thing.
Right.
I'm very delighted that Finance Minister Sitharaman has picked up that thread and, made a bold statement with an expenditure and a specifically a capital expenditure oriented budget, both on health and infrastructure. Since this is on real estate, I'll limit the next few comments to that. From a home buyer's point of view, sentiment and the overall life cycle cost of acquisition is a very important aspect, along with the sentiment of that I will have a job, I will have income to be able to make that single largest purchase decision. I think both from a sentiment point of view, from a directional point of view, from an income and asset growth and income and growth point of view, as well as from stability of fiscal, which is an important part of the budget, as well as relative stability of interest rates, although we'll see how it pans out. I think there is a very positive sentiment for the individual home buyer. For the corporate developer, as well as the income producing InvIT, REIT, developer corporate, I think given a capital intensive sector, the focus on both improvement in supply as well as, which is the availability of land, stable policies, compliance, ease of doing business, as well as directionally the availability of capital is a huge positive. So in summary, for all segments or stakeholders in the real estate sector, without doing specific SOPs, which have sometimes unintended consequences, laying out a roadmap, for a very positive outlook, I think is making me, at least individually and personally, very, very bullish on all segments of both the economy in general and this sector in particular.
Absolutely. Mr. Suresh, final 1 minute wrap up from you on, we are past time, but I love your time.
Yeah, what a great pleasure to be in this program from 3 o'clock. This is a visual, this is one of the most important and visionary national development budget, as I'm able to see, with a thrust on growth, development and employment. And more importantly, once all this happens over there, the real estate sector is the natural collateral segment that will on its own start growing. We have the right framework for that, and the policy framework already identified. The continuation of that also has been signaled, and has already indicated Kuldip Chawlla in his 3 or 4 points on real estate. It brings things for all the stakeholders in a large way. And more importantly, this one budget where you're getting so many positives out of, and no taxation at all for any major thing. I would say no pain, more gain. Least amount of pain, but large amount of gain coming. Literally pulling a rabbit out of the hat. You know what I'm trying to say? I would say, as you said, a good directional budget with national development goals well in set, and more importantly, bring back the large confidence of India as a country to show we can deliver.
Thank you so much. I endorse that. Our two consumers who have posted their queries, Kusum Mandral and Shalini Jaiswal, I think what Kuldip Chawlla said and what V. Suresh said actually answers what you said. What is there for the home buyers? There is positivity. What is there for home buyers? There is a promise that things can happen. There's a promise that finance will be made available. There's a promise that infrastructure will definitely be in place. So with all that, clearly the Sensex is rallying. The Nifty has ended at 14,281.20. It's risen 646 points. Clearly, there is bullishness around this. The devil is always in the detail. Of course, over the next few days, we will be analyzing more. But thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Neeraj, for being there, hand-holding us at every step of this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for being with us from 3 o'clock onwards. And Kuldip and Sushil Mohta, it's always a pleasure to have you here.